Imagine this, you're a manager, and you've just landed a new job in the Middle East. Now, the usual playbook says you've got to build relationships first, and then maybe you can get down to business. But what if that playbook is, well, wrong? Today, we're going to dive into Oman, where a really surprising study on leadership completely challenges that stereotype. It reveals a workplace culture that's way more complex and honestly a lot more interesting than you might think. So let's start with this big question. When you're leading a new team in a culture that's not your own, what do you focus on first? The personal bonds? The trust? Or do you just get straight to the work? Believe me, for any manager working globally, this is the critical puzzle to solve. If you get it wrong, it's not just a little awkward. We're talking about projects getting derailed and relationships souring before you even get started. Okay, so the classic theory basically splits the world into two camps. You've got high-context cultures, like you find in much of the Arab world, where communication is way more indirect. It's all about reading between the lines. Relationships and shared history create this unspoken language. Trust isn't about your resume, it's about who you are. So, following that logic, you'd walk into an office in Oman thinking relationships are everything. But as we're about to see, it's just not that simple. To really get what's going on, we first need to look at Oman's unique cultural DNA. And a great way to do that is with the famous Hofstede model. Think of it like a cultural fingerprint. It maps out a country's core values and shows us what really makes it tick. Okay, now look at this comparison, because this is where it gets really interesting. You can see Oman has some things in common with its neighbors, like a high respect for hierarchy, no real surprise there. But then, a couple of numbers just jump right off the page. It's a little more individualistic than the average, but the real shocker, look at that masculinity score. It's 12. That is incredibly low. So what on earth does that mean? Well, in cultural studies, masculinity has nothing to do with gender. It's all about a society's values. Think of it this way. A masculine culture is all about achievement, being assertive, winning. A feminine culture, on the other hand, is about cooperation, modesty, and quality of life. So with a score of just 12, Oman is one of the most feminine cultures on the planet. And that adds a really fascinating new layer to our puzzle. This exact cultural puzzle is what got a team of researchers, led by Bahaudin thinking back in 2010. They decided, you know what? Enough with the big theories. Let's go find out what's really happening on the ground in Oman. They wanted to measure leadership styles directly. So what they went out and surveyed 129 Omani government employees. And these weren't just any employees, they were all managers in their departments. They were asked a whole series of questions designed to figure out one thing. What's your natural leadership style? Now, the researchers went into this with the same expectation we started with. They thought, okay, Oman is a high-context culture, so we're definitely going to find a strong preference for relationship-oriented leadership. That was the hypothesis. But what they actually found? Yeah, nobody saw this coming. It took that simple relationship-first stereotype and just flipped it completely on its head. The results were honestly pretty stunning. Get this. The managers scored almost identically high on both task orientation and relationship orientation. With scores right around 40, it wasn't one or the other. They were highly focused on both. It revealed this near-perfect balance between getting the job done and caring for the people who are doing it. Okay, so that's the big picture. But you might be thinking, well, surely that changes, right? Maybe younger managers are more task-focused, or maybe there are differences between men and women. Those are great questions. And yeah, the researchers wondered about that too. And the answer they found? Zero. Zilch. Nada. The study found no statistically significant differences in leadership style based on gender or on age. This tells us this wasn't just some fluke. This balanced approach seems to be a really deeply embedded trait across the entire Omani professional world. So that just leads to the huge question. Why? How did Oman develop this unique, balanced leadership style that seems to defy all the simple cultural models? Well, the researchers offered a fascinating explanation for it. The study suggests that modern Omani culture is fed by two powerful historical rivers that flow into one. On one hand, you have its deep Arab Islamic roots. That's where that strong focus on relationships, community, and social harmony comes from. But on the other hand, you have a long history of interaction with British and Indian cultures, which are traditionally much more task-oriented. That brought in an emphasis on structure, process, and efficiency. The result isn't a clash, but a unique blend.
So this is all super fascinating, but what does it actually mean for you if you're working in or with Oman? Let's distill all this down into some practical takeaways.
First, remember that high power distance score? Hierarchy is really important, so show respect for seniority. Second, their high score for uncertainty avoidance means they value stability and loyalty way more than risky, out-of-the-box ideas. And third, you can expect leaders to have a kind of paternalistic style, where loyalty can sometimes be valued even more highly than pure efficiency. They care for their people, and they expect that care and loyalty in return. And that leaves us with a really provocative final question to think about. If the data shows that Omani leaders are highly task-oriented, why do so many expatriates perceive the work culture as slow? It's a powerful reminder that culture is always complex, and that gap between what people value and what people experience, well, that's often where the deepest insights are hiding.